For years, I thought I had a perfect marriage. My wife, Emily, was everything I could have asked for. Beautiful, intelligent, and loving. We built a life together, and I genuinely believed she loved me just as much as I loved her. But little did I know, beneath her charming exterior, she was hiding a secret that would destroy everything we had built. It all started with little things, strange late nights, distant behavior, and subtle changes in her routine. At first, I brushed it off as nothing. But as the weeks went by, I began noticing things that didn't add up. The phone calls she would quickly hang up on when I entered the room, the unfamiliar perfume on her clothes, and the way she would glance nervously at her phone. My gut told me something was wrong. One evening, I decided to confront her. She tried to deny it, brushing off my concerns with excuses and laughter. But I wasn't stupid. I had my suspicions, and I wasn't going to let this go. I hired a private investigator to follow her. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks when I received the photos. She had been seeing another man for months. Anger and betrayal consumed me, but I refused to let her get away with it. I knew Emily. She was proud, self-absorbed, and had a reputation to maintain. So, I planned my revenge carefully. I gathered all the evidence, all the photos, and all the details of her affair. But instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to let her think she was getting away with it. I started behaving normally at home, as if everything was fine. I pretended to be the clueless, trusting husband she thought I was. I watched her continue her affair, oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. She would come home late, wearing the same seductive smile she had when she was with him. The irony was unbearable. Then, the day came. I had everything in place. I invited friends, family, and colleagues to a dinner party under the guise of a casual get-together. Emily, ever the social butterfly, was excited about it. When everyone had gathered, I made my move. I stood up and calmly explained to everyone what had been happening behind my back. The affair. The lies. The betrayal. The room went silent as Emily's face turned pale. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. As I revealed the photos and messages, she realized her perfect life was unraveling before her eyes. The people she cared about, her colleagues, and even our closest friends, all of them knew the truth. Her reputation, which she had worked so hard to build, was shattered in an instant. But that wasn't the worst part. The man she had been cheating with? He didn't stick around. The moment he realized his affair was exposed, he disappeared without a trace, leaving her to deal with the aftermath alone. Emily's world came crashing down. She lost her social standing, her job, and the respect she once commanded. Friends stopped talking to her. Colleagues distanced themselves. In the blink of an eye, she went from being the woman everyone admired to the woman everyone pitied. And I walked away unscathed, having given her a taste of her own medicine. The revenge was sweet, but what hurt the most was knowing that she never expected me to retaliate. She had taken everything for granted, believing she could do whatever she wanted without facing any consequences. But in the end, she learned the hard way. Betrayal doesn't come without a price. As time went on, the weight of Emily's betrayal slowly lifted from my shoulders. I had done what I set out to do, and in a strange way, seeing her crumble under the pressure was a form of closure. But what struck me more than anything was how her life had fallen apart so quickly. She had built a house of cards around her social status, her perfect image, and her relationship with me. The moment I exposed her lies, it all came crashing down, and she had no one to turn to. She tried reaching out to me in the weeks that followed. At first, it was a barrage of angry texts and emails, filled with accusations that I was cruel and vindictive. But soon, they turned into desperate pleas for forgiveness, begging me to take her back, promising that she had learned her lesson. I wasn't moved. The woman who had once been my partner, my confidant, had shown me a side that I couldn't overlook. There was no going back from this. One evening, she showed up at my door, looking nothing like the confident woman she used to be. Her eyes were red from crying, and she wore the same defeated expression that had once been so foreign to her. I opened the door, and for a moment, we just stood there, facing each other in silence. She hesitated before speaking. I know I hurt you. I betrayed you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand. I was lost. I made a huge mistake, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, processing everything she said. She was right. She had been lost. But the damage was done. Forgiveness was something I couldn't give her. Not yet, maybe not ever. You had your chances, Emily. You chose someone else. You chose to lie to me, to betray everything we had. And in the end, you chose your own image over the truth, I said, my voice steady but firm. What you lost wasn't just me. You lost your own integrity, your dignity. And now, you're left with nothing. The look on her face said it all, shame, regret, and a deep sense of loss. She stood there for a long moment, clearly fighting back tears, but she didn't say anything else. I didn't need to say anything more either. I had already won. She left, and that was the last time I saw her. Over the following months, Emily's life seemed to spiral even further. She lost her job, and the friends who had once supported her began to drift away. It became clear to everyone what kind of person she truly was. She tried to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, but the truth was, no one trusted her anymore. The mask she had worn for so long had fallen, and there was no putting it back on. I, on the other hand, felt a strange sense of relief. I didn't want to be the villain in her story, but I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences of her actions. My life moved on. I rebuilt, reconnected with old friends, and focused on things that mattered, things that didn't involve the toxicity of betrayal. It wasn't easy, but I learned something important throughout it all. Revenge wasn't about hurting her more than she hurt me. It was about reclaiming my life and standing up for my own worth. By exposing her, I didn't just punish her. I freed myself from the chains of dishonesty, regret, and false hope. In the end, I didn't need her to apologize or beg for my forgiveness. What mattered was that I had regained control, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Emily, on the other hand, never fully recovered. She tried to move on, but the scars of her actions never truly faded. What was left for her? A life full of loneliness, distrust, and a constant reminder of the price she paid for her deceit. She had lost everything, not just the man who loved her, but her own sense of self-respect. And that was something she could never get back. As the months passed, I couldn't help but watch from a distance as Emily's life continued to unravel. The people who had once admired her began to see her for what she truly was, a woman who had traded trust and love for selfish indulgence. Her social circle shrank, and her reputation, once pristine, was now irreparably tainted. I heard through mutual friends that she had tried dating again, but it was a far cry from the glamorous life she had once lived. No one wanted to get too close to her. Her charm, which had once been her greatest weapon, no longer held the same power. People saw through her, and instead of the elegant, poised woman she used to be, they saw the remnants of someone who had destroyed everything for a fleeting moment of excitement. She did, however, try one more thing. One fateful day, out of the blue, she reached out to me. It was a simple message, asking if we could meet. There was no longer the arrogance in her tone that I once knew. This time, it was desperation, a silent plea for closure, for redemption. I wasn't sure what to expect, but part of me knew this meeting was inevitable. We arranged to meet at a cafe, a neutral place, one that held no emotional ties. When I arrived, I saw her sitting at a corner table, her eyes dull and tired, the same woman who had once been full of life and confidence. She looked almost unrecognizable, not just physically, but emotionally. Her gaze softened when she saw me, and she stood up slowly. "I didn't expect to ever see you again," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "But I need you to know, everything I did was wrong. And I've spent every day since regretting it." I took a seat across from her, my demeanor calm, even though the emotional weight of what had happened still lingered. "Emily," I said, "I don't need your regrets. What I needed was your honesty, your respect. And I gave you that in return. I don't want to relive the past, But you need to understand that your actions have consequences. She nodded, her face flushed with the shame that I had seen too many times before. I know, she whispered. I've lost everything. I've tried to rebuild my life, but no matter where I go, the truth follows me. I can't outrun it. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't anger or resentment, pity. She had destroyed her life with her own hands, and now she had to live with the consequences. You could have had everything, Emily, I said, my voice softer now. But you threw it all away, and I'm not sure you'll ever be able to fix what you've done. She looked at me, eyes filled with unshed tears. Do you ever wonder if it's too late to fix things? To fix me? I thought for a moment before answering. It's not about fixing you, Emily. It's about you fixing yourself. But you can't do that by relying on others to forgive you or by asking for a second chance you don't deserve. You have to start with yourself. I could see that what I said struck her deeply. She didn't respond, but her eyes seemed to focus inward, lost in thought. I don't expect anything from you, but I just wanted to apologize, she said, standing up to leave. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to hear it from me. I stood too, walking with her toward the door.
I've heard you, I said.
But you can't undo what's been done. You have to move forward. And I'm not a part of that anymore. With one last glance, she walked away. I watched her leave, and something inside me clicked into place. The chapter with Emily had closed, not because of anything she had done, but because I had finally let go. The anger, the hurt, all of it had dissipated over time, leaving behind the simple truth. She wasn't my problem anymore. From that day on, I lived my life with a renewed sense of clarity. The lesson I had learned was invaluable. Trust was fragile, and when it was broken, it could never be fully restored. But I didn't need to seek revenge anymore. Life had already delivered its punishment, and it was more than enough. Emily never reached out again. She continued to struggle, facing the consequences of her choices, while I moved on with my life. I found peace in knowing that, though my revenge was harsh, it had been just. It wasn't about hurting her, it was about exposing her for who she really was and allowing her to face the reality of what she had done. And, in the end, I realized that the most powerful revenge wasn't about ruining someone else's life. It was about reclaiming your own and moving forward, free from the weight of betrayal. As the years went by, I found that moving forward was not just about distancing myself from Emily, but also about rediscovering who I was outside of that painful chapter. The time I spent focusing on myself, healing, reflecting, and rebuilding became the most important period of my life. I focused on my career, rekindled old friendships, and explored new passions that I had long neglected. I felt lighter, more at peace than I had in years. In contrast, Emily's life seemed to remain stagnant. The decisions she had made had irrevocably altered the course of her future. She kept trying to rebuild her social circle, but it was clear that the trust she had once taken for granted was gone. No one would ever look at her the same way. She tried therapy, personal development, and countless apologies, but it was like trying to glue together a shattered vase. The cracks were too deep. I would occasionally hear about her through mutual acquaintances. Sometimes it was gossip, how she had tried to date again but was constantly haunted by her past, how her professional life had faltered as a result of her tarnished reputation. Other times, it was small, quieter things, a mention of her at a gathering where she had awkwardly tried to fit in, but her presence felt forced and out of place. The life she once had, the admiration she had taken for granted, was slipping away, and the woman she had been before seemed like a distant memory to everyone, including herself. There were moments, especially late at night, when the weight of my thoughts would hit me harder, where I wondered if Emily ever regretted what she had done, if she realized how much she had lost, not just in terms of me, but in terms of her own happiness. But then I reminded myself that it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I had moved on, and that was all that mattered. One day, out of the blue, I received an email from Emily. It had been years since I had heard from her, and her name on the screen immediately brought back memories. My first instinct was to delete it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Her message was short but strikingly different from anything she had sent before. She didn't beg for forgiveness or try to justify her actions. Instead, she wrote, Asterisk, I've spent years reflecting on everything I did, and I know now that I was selfish, dishonest, and reckless. I can never undo the damage I caused, and I don't expect you to respond. But I wanted to let you know that I am truly sorry for everything. Not just for what I did to you, but for what I did to myself. I wish you nothing but peace and happiness. Asterisk. There were no apologies seeking to re-enter my life, no attempts to reopen old wounds. It was simply an acknowledgement of the past and the damage she had caused, not just to me, but to herself. I sat with the email for a long time, unsure of how to react. A part of me felt vindicated, as if I had finally received the closure I didn't know I still needed. Another part of me felt a strange sense of empathy. People make mistakes. I had made my own mistakes in life, although none as large as hers, and I had grown because of them. Was it possible for her to grow too? But in the end, I knew that our paths were forever separated. She had chosen her course, and I had chosen mine. There was no more room for her in my life. I didn't feel anger or hatred toward her anymore. I felt nothing, just a quiet understanding that the person I had loved was gone, and the person she had become was not someone I could ever return to. I didn't respond to her email. It wasn't necessary. I had already found peace with the past, and I had no desire to reopen that chapter. What mattered now was that I had moved on, had healed, and had become a better version of myself in the process. Emily, for all her apologies and attempts at redemption, was left to face her own truth alone. There was no one left to help her rebuild the life she had thrown away, no one left to give her a second chance. She would have to find her way forward on her own, and that was a journey she would have to take in silence. As for me, I knew one thing for sure. My revenge had never been about getting back at her. It had been about reclaiming my own life, and in doing so, I had found peace. And that, in the end, was the most powerful victory of all.